All right, hey everybody, welcome. Lori Petro here. Welcome to our live Q&A. We are live streaming on Facebook, hopefully. Let's go look. Yay, we are. We're here. And I also have the Zoom room open, so if you are in a current class, you can check your email. You can always join us online if you don't want to join us on Facebook. But I guess there's some people watching too. So hi, say hi. Tell me where you are checking in from. And if you have a question, please feel free to pop it in down below and I will try to keep checking. But I want to share some things with you guys today. How are you guys doing? It's crazy time for me right now. I think that I've been sort of just going with it and, like powering through and my work didn't slow down too much right away. And then just the last couple of days, I realized how anxious I was inside and how I was sort of maybe in denial of that. I was aware, but it's hitting me. It's definitely hitting me. And I know that it's going to hit our kids. And our kids, I had one mom write in, she's got 4, 5, and 7-year-old, I believe, and all right in that age group. And they're all yelling. She said right now it feels like the house that she grew up in where everybody's yelling all the time, and that doesn't feel good. I don't know if any of you guys are experiencing that. If you are, I'm with you. Some of you guys are trying to homeschool or at least try to maintain some kind of a schedule for your kids, because I know some kids really depend on that schedule, and losing their routine, losing their schedule can really throw them off. It can throw off their behavior. So if you are experiencing some of that, it's Chelsea. Hi, Chelsea. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Nice to see you. I'm so glad you're here. Chelsea's one of our parent educators that's in training. She's starting in the fall. We have a training going on right now, but I also have a training coming up in the fall. If anybody's interested in supporting parents in their community, I would love to have you join. But I wanted to share some things that are going to help us with our kids right now, and especially during these times. I think if we didn't experience trauma in our history before, we're all definitely going through an experience now, which again, trauma isn't about what the experience is and how big it is. It's really about our experience of it and our coping mechanisms. And so I know that these are not easy times. I never mean to simplify or diminish anyone's experience. So if this does not speak to you, please know that it's not meant to, again, diminish what you're going through. It just means that I'm sharing tips based on either what I had someone email in or just trying to be as sensitive as I can to everybody's experience while also addressing important things that may come up. But so let me talk about the things that I think that we need to do right now for our kids. So to the mama who has a lot of kids, 4, 5, and 7, right, that are experiencing a lot of yelling right now, everybody is probably stressed out, and everybody's home, and depending on the size of our home and the size of our family, it may be a crowded environment. There may not be a lot of places for everybody to get away. So one of those things that I think is really important is that we all have a place that we know we can retreat to. So does everyone in your family, including you, have somewhere, and this may be in the corner of your bedroom where it's quiet and no one can see you. It doesn't mean that has to be a whole entire separate room. And for a child, it could be a tent, one of those pop-up tents. For a small child, it could be a pop-up tent that's in the living room or in their room or in their playroom or wherever you might have available. But a quiet place that kids can retreat to can be a really great tool for helping them regulate some of the stress that they might be feeling and get away from some of the chaos that might be in the environment. So if you start to see, and if you can be preventative and see that your child is starting to maybe get dysregulated and notice that their behavior is starting to escalate before it really escalates, if you can get there, it's a great time to go in and help them retreat to that quiet place, that privacy that they might need that will help them regroup. And this is something that maybe you can discover with them beforehand and not in that moment necessarily, and then help them, lead them to that place when their behavior goes off track. So a quiet place to retreat to, whether that's a fort, an outdoor fort, a tent in the bedroom, just being in their bedroom, or a chair in a window, that's by a window, and where they can calm down and it's maybe away from the rest of the family. So think about in your space, where are some of those places that might be available for your kids? So another place that I think, or another thing that I think is really important for us to do during these times, is to check in with our kids multiple times a day. I know that sometimes we might think they're fine, or we might move through a conflict and resolve it and think, oh, no big deal, everybody got through it, it's not a problem. But maybe kids still have a little bit of that residual ickiness going on, and they're going to carry that into their next experience, with some kind of a relational experience with somebody else, with a sibling. Right now, I guess we're not really seeing many people, so a sibling, or dad or mom or whoever else. So you guys know about the Teach tool, and if you don't, go back and check it out. So it's 5 steps to conflict resolution. It's also in the cards, actually, in the communication cards. So this is where we take a breath to regulate, right? We don't walk into any situation until we actually can feel open, emotionally available, and responsive to that situation. Because if we go in heated, then it's just a reactive state, meaning another possibly reactive state. We might get some compliance, but we're not necessarily building any skills, because we're not going in with an attitude of, let me help you learn, let me teach you, let me model. It's going in with that idea of, I need to stop the situation and control this, which is good in where danger is involved, but not so good where we're trying to teach skills to our kids. So take a breath is the first step, and then engage and empathize, right? We want to actually acknowledge and validate that need that we see. What is it that is going on? And then those feelings and needs that we have, right? So we want to engage emotionally, and then acknowledge the feelings and needs, and then connect. And then that's to see it. But the H is always, let's help our kids move into this new space, right? Whether we're going to brainstorm to problem solve, whether we're going to help them repair with somebody, whether we're going to help them move into another room, into their quiet place, so that they can regroup and regroup and regulate. But then how do they feel after that? Have we resolved things to the point where kids feel like they can move on, where they feel like they have been heard, accepted, validated? Doesn't mean that we approve of their behavior, but that what they were trying to do, that strategy that they were using to meet their need, was that heard? Was that validated? Do they have a new way to meet that need? That's what's really important here. And what was my point to all that? Oh, the H, going in and checking in. So we might think that we resolved something, that conflict, right? We move through those 5 steps. But if we don't do that H part, if we don't help them move through the experience and then check in and see how they feel, we might miss residual guilt, pain, hurt, sadness, unmet needs, unheard feelings that we just weren't aware of. It's not anybody's fault. It just means that maybe our kids didn't fully process. So especially people that are spending a lot of time at home with their children and feeling like they have to work, and because some of us are working at home still, and then our kids are needing to go online and perhaps complete work, and then it feels like suddenly we're in charge of homeschooling and still working, and we may feel pulled in a lot of different directions. I'm not saying that those responsibilities aren't important, but how can we also fill up our resources so that we do have time to give? And how do we set boundaries so that we can say, this isn't something that is doable, and maybe we have to be okay with that, check in with somebody else who can modify the situation, whether it be coworker, boss, employee, or our children's school. I mean, don't take everything that, especially with school right now, I know that everybody's worried about, not everybody, but a lot of people are worried about their kids falling behind, and I know that's really important, that children we want, especially we don't want them to lose skills that we've worked so hard to help them build. But this is also a time that they're not going to be very skillful, and they're not going to be very good at learning, because they're going to be picking up on our stress, and things that are going on in the world make them feel a little bit unsafe and unsteady. So if you can, as much as you can, try to breathe through some of that worry and that anxiety that you may feel around your children and homeschooling and being with them all of the time. Not because you don't want to be with them, but because it's overwhelming and it's a lot to ask, and they need to be entertained, or they need to be, I mean, a lot of us are cooking 3 meals a day when we're used to maybe having a chunk of time where we get to prepare meals because they're at school, or whatever your experience may be. Just be really gentle with yourself right now. Quiet Place, Anna. Yes. Hi, Anna. Yes, Quiet Place was the first one. Quiet Place to Retreat to. So I'm going to check in on them multiple times a day is the second one. The next thing that I want us to take into consideration and do for our children at this time is just to be really aware of our nonverbal messages, our nonverbal communication. That can be something as simple as our tone. We tend to underestimate how just a very a sharp tone or cold tone can send our children spiraling into, and not necessarily where they're thinking they're unloved or anything like that, but their nervous system picks up that very, very precise antenna that they have to signal danger, picks up on that ever so slight change or anxiousness in your voice. And then suddenly their bodies react to that. And it's not that their minds are making a cognitive decision to be then disruptive or think something that's not true. It's just that their nervous system is immature. They don't always know how to correctly interpret signals and messages. So if we can be really aware of what we're saying to our kids without saying anything, what we're saying when we're not saying anything, the nonverbal signals, the nonverbal messages. Are we standing over them? Are we sighing really heavily? Are our hands on our hips while we wait? Or can we get down? Can we lower ourselves and bring ourselves down to our kids' perspective, to their eye level, so it feels a little bit less threatening? If they need space, can we be aware of giving them space? Or if we know that our kid is someone that really loves that physical contact and comfort to make them feel safe and secure again, being aware of that. So being aware of our nonverbal signals like tone, facial expressions, all of that is going to be really helpful in keeping our kids emotionally balanced, regulated, all of that kind of thing, especially right now when they're just, everybody's off right now. You guys, I'm off a little bit. And again, it's sort of this off where I don't know what's going on. I'm not aware of it. I'm not necessarily verbalizing something specific, but it's definitely a feeling of just being unsure of what's going to happen next, what this means. And then the weight of it, the reality of not interacting or engaging with people, of having things canceled over the next several months is a little bit uneasy. So we have a question that came in, and it is something that's come up for me this week, is how to handle conference calls, phone calls for work with a 4-year-old who seems to be okay playing independently until I get on a call balancing work. So balancing work with being present with a 4-year-old and a 5-month-old. Definitely challenging times, definitely. So I think the big answer is that there are no easy answers. I don't think there's something that's going to work for everybody, but and especially a 4-year-old who's not going to have necessarily the ability to restrain themselves from needing you. And you're right, they can be playing okay because they see in the background that you're unoccupied, that you're available. But as soon as something else takes your attention, again, that antenna goes up and kids go, oh, wait a minute, where did my home base go? My safe base is not completely available. So sometimes something as simple as letting your kid, if it's possible in the kind of call that you're engaging in, letting them sit on your lap. If you can mute up the phone and be like, you know what, buddy, I can't come down there, but you can come sit on my lap, or holding your hand in that moment. So when they cry out and they're tugging on you, and if you can smile and hold their hand, I think that a lot of workplaces are definitely aware that this is something that everyone's dealing with. So that, I mean, even that, you guys see that video that time on, I forget what news channels, he was being interviewed from his home office, and his little one runs in, and then his wife runs in with the baby, and the little walker thing runs in behind. So he's got like 2 kids running in, and his wife tries to sneak in and drags them all out. That's part of it. So scheduling things, of course, when we know that maybe we have a little bit more time or available. I used video distraction. I did. I don't want us to feel bad about using TV and video and things like that. If you have a really important call that you can't be interrupted, if a video is going, I kept my child very occupied. The typical child that you hear where they just like zone out into the TV until you turn it off. My kid would do that. So if you have a child that is occupied, I say don't feel bad about using screen time here and there when we need to, because again, this is something that we've never experienced. But affirming their closeness and their security, being able to say, I'm here, you're safe. I know you want my attention. What else can you do? You want to play right down below next to you if that's possible. I think what kids are looking for is us to reaffirm their safety. If you can take a moment to do that, and I'm close, let them know I'm right here, especially with a 4-year-old. They're just, again, when they see you go off and your attention is now diverted away from them, or at least talking on the phone, they know that you're preoccupied with something. It's more that fear that you're not going to be available for them. So I think reaffirming that is more important than any kind of boundary, like physical barrier that you can put in place, which again, maybe video, TV, that kind of thing, or being able to schedule those times. But there's no way to convince a 4-year-old, right? I could be logical with an 8-year-old and say, and set up some rules, like here are some boundaries when you need me. And if those boundaries get broken, it's easier to sort of corral an older child, but a 4-year-old might really need you. So I think that we have to give them just a little bit of space and understanding for that. All right, so let's go back to, I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, let me know. Yes, thank you, awesome. And so let's go back to our list. I don't see any questions. So someone to check on kids multiple times a day, check in to gauge their emotional balance. Where are they? Did I say that? That was one of our, after the retreat, the place to retreat, they need to know they're safe. And then for us to be aware of their nonverbal signals. That's another one that we talked about. Reframe their reactionary behavior. Right. So what does that mean? That means that if we look at those behavior challenges that our kids have, if we look at those behaviors as an opportunity for them to grow, an opportunity for them to develop their skills, instead of, oh no, this is something that they're doing again that I have to stop. It's like, oh, this is something that they haven't learned yet how to do. It becomes a little bit less, if we look at it like that, it becomes a lot easier to then help reframe their behavior. So when you have, your 4-year-old comes in and he pushes the 7-year-old drawing or, crayons, everybody's sharing and playing. He pushes the 7-year-old and he says, you're a big stinky head. Our instinct might be to run in there and say, that's not nice. Everyone's sharing, or you have your space here. But if we can go in and reframe that behavior and say, looks like you wanted to ask your brother to move over and it looks like you needed a little bit more space. Is that right? So we can go in and reframe their behavior, try to reframe what needs so that they can recognize, oh, yes, you understand me. Yes, that's what I wanted. I needed more space. You're right. Thank you for validating that for me, right? The kid feels heard, feels felt in that moment. Then the next thing you say, let's try asking your brother when you need more space. He doesn't know what you mean when you call him a big stinky head. But if you say to him, I need more space, he'll know what to do, right? They're more open to hearing that next part when we get to it. Sometimes, depending on the situation, you're not always rushing to offer that information. But in something simple, things can tend to escalate if we go in and try to stop the behavior. Don't do that. That's not nice. Be nice. Speak nicely. Ask him to move. Go in. Looks like you were trying to ask. Looks like you needed more space. Your brother doesn't know what you mean when you say big stinky head, but he knows if you say, please move over, right? So if we can reframe their reactionary behavior from something that needs to be stopped to an opportunity for us to model what it is that they need to learn, goes so far in enabling them to mature in the right direction, right? Maturity doesn't just happen because they get bigger and they grow older. It actually happens through these relational interactions where they feel like they can be vulnerable, right? They can feel bad in the presence of someone, and then they can also transform that bad feeling into something useful. Oh, this is what I can do now. This is what somebody heard what I needed. And they might not be able to do it the right way, right away, but it's about the modeling. It's about the repetition. That's always going to be what children need to help them build their skills. They take in that empathy that they feel from us, and it informs their behavior in the future. And it shapes the way their brains develop. It helps them have empathy for others when they have experienced it firsthand. Oh, we have another question. Hi, Leanne. Thank you for joining us. So Leanne is asking, do you have any suggestions for a 4-year-old that has a really hard time losing at games? We've been playing a lot of board games during this time, and if my daughter doesn't win, there are very big tears. I want to teach her to be a good sport. Yes. Okay, so this is very common. How bad does it feel when you are any age, but when you're really excited and you think you're going to win, or when you want to show somebody how good you are, like your mom or your big brother or your little sister, you want to show off how great you are at this game, and then you lose, and it's really disappointing. That's a big feeling. And the way to teach our kids to be good sports is to honor those feelings and to let them have them. So what does that mean? That means if a child goes and tries to throw the game piece because they're so angry that they lost, that we stop that action. I'm not going to let you hurt anybody. You can't throw, but you're so mad that you lost and you were hoping to win. You were having so much fun. And it's so very disappointing to lose. Honoring that experience, just validating her emotions. There is no way to convince her that she has to be a good sport. It's only through moving through this awful feeling that she has, maybe embarrassment. Think about the feelings. We think that kids have, we were talking about this in our training class the other day, we don't realize the depth of children's emotions. They're so very, just as intense as adults. You guys might know that, but a lot of people don't realize it. And so embarrassment, shame, just again, that being so excited to win something or to be noticed and to be acknowledged and to have that completely ripped from out from underneath us, right? That's so disappointing. So just honoring that disappointment for her is going to help her, because again, at 4, we don't want to expect that behavior. Don't expect when you validate, then all of a sudden she's just going to be like, okay, from game, the next game forward. So when we think of behavior, I always say we don't want to think of it like an off and on switch, like you walk into a room, you turn on the light and it's on and it stays on until you turn it off. Behavior is like we're building a house, right? We're not just turning on the lights, we're actually building the entire room, the entire structure. So it's brick by brick by brick. It's every brick that's laid with empathy and with concern and with, again, that responsibility to stop her from being hurtful. If children call people names, for example, when they lose a game, we can't stop what comes out of their mouth, but we can then say, you know what, everybody, let's give her some space, or take the child to a place where they can get that emotion out. We want to be able to find, that's why I was talking about the quiet spaces for kids. Where can they go to have these awful feelings? We can't just stuff our awful feelings down. Parents, you guys, when you have awful feelings about your kids, that you see behavior and it brings up all those awful feelings, I don't want you guys to stuff it down either. I want you to breathe through it and feel it and say it all out in your head, and maybe even write it down or say it out loud somewhere else or to someone. And then by doing that, by having that listening ear of someone, of your best friend or of your partner, that person who listens and validates that for you, they are the ones that then enable you to go back in that situation and do it differently. So that's what we want to do for our kids. We want to be that person where they can offload everything that comes up. Because at home is our safe place. That is a place where we retreat to from the outside world, where we can't show all of those behaviors. And so if we let kids do this within the safety and the confines of our home, then they know that they have a safe place, and when they go out in the world, they're able to keep it together because they go, you know what, I'm going to go find the person that loves me, that will let me unload and will help me through this. But validation of her emotions, Leanne, when she has a really hard time, there isn't anything greater than your empathy for growing those skills, for having empathy for others. I can't express that enough. And you won't necessarily see it at 3, 4, 5, 6. It starts to peak out, and then 7, it's like better, but still like up and down. And then 8, 9, 10, you really see kids' maturity come out and blossom, and then how they can then help younger kids. And it doesn't mean that they're always perfect, because I have a teenager, a 13-year-old. She's about to have a quarantine birthday, and she definitely has her moments, right? As a teenager, and just as a human being, she has her moments of upset. And what helps me get her through those moments is my validation that this is something she doesn't like, whether it's me, she thinks is being mean or unfair. I validate that for her. You think my rule is unfair. You don't like it. And I share with her too, like, I don't like when you say those things to me. I don't, but you can, but you should, or any of that. And, I try to leave it at that. Like we try to share very openly. And with a 4-year-old, you're not necessarily always sharing your feelings, but sometimes you can, definitely. Sometimes you can share what it's like for you as well. So you can share what losing feels like for you. Sometimes that's another way that you can. I don't like to one-up kids. Like, empathy isn't sharing our story to say, well, that happened to me too. But in the moment, once she's moved through it, it's something like, towards the end, when you see a child's calm down, you can say, I know what that feels like. I remember this one time when I lost, and I wanted to, and you might share what you wanted to do, what you felt like, and maybe it was similar to what was going on with your child. And all of that helps our kids regulate, because what we're trying to do is just help them move out of this bad feeling place where we have no control over our behavior, because our stress response shuts down our thinking and all those important functions, so that we can become safe, right? Maintain our safety. But that's not necessarily, we're not always maintaining our safety when we're just sort of sitting with our kids, so we don't realize that we're feeling stressed, and we'll realize how we're escalating the situation with our behavior. So hopefully that helps you, Leanne. Let me know if it did, or if you have any other questions. So when I said check in on them, this doesn't mean that we have to go and ask them how they're feeling, but you might go in and just observe. What are they doing? Are they sitting at their desk like this, mad because they have to, finish a project? Are they getting aggressive with their siblings? Or is everybody, playing a game or quietly reading a book and entertaining themselves? Does everybody seem calm? Do they seem regulated? Or do they seem agitated? So you can go in and sort of just from your own view, without asking any questions, check in on your kids, check their emotional balance, see where they are. And sometimes it just means you going in and putting a hand on their shoulder and say, hey buddy, what's up? Tell me what you're doing. Tell me about your Lego project here. Or going in and, sitting on your teenager's bed and asking them if there's anything that they need. I mean, if somebody comes into the room and asks me if there's anything that I need, I value that. That makes me feel like people care. But I don't think we always think that we should do that for our kids. So it can be verbal, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be us taking a glance at what's going on, and then if we do need to check in on them actually verbally and chat, we can do that. And then the second one that I split that up, was just kids need to know that they're safe. So if we can reaffirm, with all the heightened emotions that might be going on right now, that might be around, if we can reaffirm their safety whenever something comes up. When that clingy 4-year-old kind of starts to notice that we're on the phone and then comes running, reaffirm their safety instead of worrying about that they're interrupting, because a lot of the times it's going to be what's going on. And kids might be just picking up on stress that we are having that we don't even know we're aware of. Not always, but if it's happening in your house, just something to be aware of. So those are my 5 things, right? Someone to check in on them multiple times a day, to know they are safe, a quiet place to retreat to, for us to be aware of our nonverbal signals, and then for us to reframe their reactionary behavior. So when you hear, "Be quiet, Mom, you don't know what you're talking about," you can reframe that and say, "Sounds like what you need is for me to listen and understand what you're saying, and I'm not doing that very well." Like, just validate that. It sounds so simple, but for our kids, it's huge. It's so huge. It's so huge. All right, you guys, I don't see any other questions. So with that, I am going to wish you guys a wonderful rest of your week. I hope everybody stays safe and stays home, and that you can manage through with your kids and it doesn't get too crazy out there. So I will see you all back here on the 15th for another Q&A. Until then, please remember, everybody, it's about being conscious, not perfect.